Welcome to the IDD Get to Know Me Special Olympics edition. I'm your co-host, Victor.
And I'm your co host, Melanie.
In this edition of the podcast, we will be diving into some of the topics important to the Special Olympics community.
Before we start, let's explain what IDD means.
Great idea! IDD stands for intellectual and or developmental disabilities. You will hear from us, people with IDD, and experts on specific health topics. Today's topic is men's health, and we are going to be talking about the importance of men's health in Special Olympics. We will be hearing from 4 different guests. First, Jonathan Weiss, a researcher in clinical psychologist, and Duncan Leblanc, a coach and family caregiver. Then Shewfelt, a Champions Network athlete, and last but certainly not least, Matthew Fields, a fellow Special Olympics athlete. We hope you enjoy. We are lucky to have like a psychologist here and a coach here. So please, Jonathan, introduce yourself. What do you do, and what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Okay. Well, thanks for that introduction, Victor. I'm the psychologist of the two of us speaking today with you. I started many years ago, actually, as a volunteer and then a coach with Special Olympics in Quebec, in my hometown. And that eventually led me to be a psychologist who works a lot with people with intellectual disabilities, both kids and adults, especially around mental health and well-being. My favorite ice cream flavor, I should also say I'm a professor at York University, and that's where I am right now. My favorite ice cream flavor right now is Moose Tracks.
So for me, I'm a coach with Special Olympics. I've been coaching for 19 years now with Special Olympics. I've coached other sports before that. What got me involved is my son's a Special Olympics athlete. So I coach the speed skating, which is what he participated in. But I also have started golf, and I coached basketball and soccer in the past as well. And I coach at a variety of levels, whether it's community or it's provincial, national, or higher levels. My favorite flavor of ice cream, rainbow sherbet, any sherbet really, but rainbow sherbet from Quarther Dairies.
Wow. What are some mindfulness techniques that you practice with your athletes? Duncan, I'll let you go first.
Mindfulness techniques. There's it just take breathing exercise. It is what we sometimes do. So taking the deep breaths, and just sort of being in the present as opposed to reflecting on what's happening. That's one of the big ones that.
What about you, Jonathan?
Well, I'm not currently a coach. And I wish when I was a coach 20 years ago, we were talking about mindfulness for athletes. But at the time, I have to tell you, people weren't talking about mental health for athletes 25 years ago. Not really the way that we are now.
And Jonathan, what was it like 25 years ago when you started training? Was there any like mindfulness training? Was there anything about training people with mental health? What was it like 25 years ago?
Well, I think that when it comes to mental health for athletes in general, we're having conversations now about it. We see it in kind of Olympians now starting to talk about it, but 25 years ago, people weren't talking about mental health for athletes, let alone what to do about mental health concerns when they were there. I think there was a real message that people had to suck it up, especially kind of men, kind of male athletes, kind of had to suck it up and just deal with that on their own quietly, and that they shouldn't have mental health concerns, that everything has to be okay, that they're supposed to be stronger than that or something, these kinds of messages. So I don't think people were focused on that part of an athlete's well-being. There was mental health, and then there was kind of sport and competition. But I think the two were kept very separate from each other. And as a volunteer, I remember seeing athletes struggling with their well-being. They would come to practice, they would come to games, and they would visibly look stressed or anxious and upset. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have training. I was just there to help, but I didn't know how to help. So I don't think that was a part of the conversation, Vic.
One more question to you, Jonathan. Why do we need to talk about this topic more? What does research say on this topic?
It's a great question, Vic. I think that when it comes to mental health for men with intellectual disabilities, we need to talk about this for a number of reasons. The research tells us that uh, people with intellectual disabilities, whether you're talking about kids or teens or adults, are far more likely to have mental health concerns than people without intellectual disabilities. We also know from research that even though have they're far more likely to have those challenges, they're a lot less likely to access good help.
How that conversation would look like with men who never show their emotions and then are just saying now, okay, now you can show your emotions, now you can feel the way you're feeling. How, and Duncan, I'll say this to you, how do we wire people with Special Olympics brain just to like talk about their mental health again? How do we teach athletes to talk about their mental health again? How do we start that conversation?
Great question. It's really, really important. It's not about wiring the brain. It's about just changing the format, I think. It always starts off with building good relationships with the coach and the family or caregivers of the athletes, and being able to have those times where you have those quiet chats, because that's when I find the male athletes will open up, when it's not in front of their peers, when it's more of an individual pieces. Uh, every athlete comes from a different background, and what they bring is really based on their background. So they might come nervous and stressed because of dynamics at home are creating that, or it could be that they put pressures on themselves because they have to win a gold medal. Uh, but that's where the coaching can come in and sort of talking out those. I always say the first thing that will help anybody is being able to talk about it, getting it out in the open. It's kind of like anger. If you build it up inside, it's going to explode. So the same with mental health. Expressing those ups and downs really helps the athletes. And then working with both the athlete and the caregiver through that, and working as a team with the common approach so that we set expectations that are achievable, so that they don't see you, they'll always be nervous at the beginning of a race or a competition. That happens to every athlete, but it's about how do we manage those feelings, and it's working with them about the management of the feelings that's important.
What about you, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's the it, talk when you talk about it early, when there's a when athletes know that they can talk about these things in a safe way, the way that Duncan described, you're not going to have a pileup of all these negative feelings that can lead to even more significant mental health challenges. It's a lot easier to support somebody if they share about their feelings early on when they're having negative feelings, rather than waiting for it to build up over days or weeks or months. So having that, make it a normal part, normal check-in, and it normalizes. It makes it kind of safe and easier, a part of the routine to check in about these things. Yeah, and like Duncan said, it's not about getting rid of all stress, because stress is important for athletes, and it's normal for athletes to have stress. It's just about finding that right balance.
And Duncan, what are your special talks you have to your athletes just to like de-stress them and help their mental health?
So in terms of the talks, it's really uh, we do a lot of goal setting, long-term and short-term goal setting, and the short-term ones are the ones that help them de-stress. So we're not looking at their goal might be to, let's say try and win a gold. But let's break it down into what are we going to do at practice and let's meet that short term goal. And it might just be for that day that they can skate 8 laps because they come to practice tired. If we want to work on start. So it's finding something that they can achieve so that they can feel good that, okay, I've reached that little milestone that we're going to build on for the next step and the next step. Um, and we treat the practice like a competition so that our routines, building, as Jonathan mentioned, routines are important, that there's a check-in time, that our warm-up, which is where we do a lot of the check-ins, our warm-up routine is the same at competition as it is at practice, so that everything when they get to a high stake competition, they just follow their routine. And it's not, it's helping reduce those pressures that will come up later on that you as a coach are aware of.
And do you ever feel stressed during a competition? How do you make emotions calm during a big event?
Well, I mean, I working with the parents, because it's, as I said, it's a team thing. Even though they're working on specific goals, I share the goals for the competition with the parents, so that it's not about necessarily getting the gold medal. It's about what are our goals for that competition, and let's see if we can achieve those goals. So the perfect example, I just came back from a competition this weekend. The goal for one of our male athletes, Alex, was to beat his PBs, his personal best times, at the beginning of the season from last season. And he achieved that. Now, he ended up in second place in every single race, but he came out really happy that he achieved his goals, because we had talked about that, and with the parent, we'd set out those goals. He's the individual, he wants to win every race, but that's not the goal we had set out. So by pre-setting that up, that really helped. When he crossed the finish line and came off the ice, he was happy, as opposed to sad that he didn't end up in first place. So it's those kinds of things that we try and do, and each individual is going to be different.
Jonathan and Duncan, one last question. What is one piece of advice you could give family members or coaches to help them with mindfulness?
I think that when it comes to just well-being generally, I'm going to say that my one bit of advice for athletes and for coaches and for parents is that it's okay to feel stressed or anxious or sad or angry when we're in a social place that's warm and safe. So we have to find those relationships that make us feel safe so that we can express ourselves no matter how we're feeling. So foster those, look to create those healthy, warm, safe relationships. The coach to the athlete, the coach to the parent, the parents to the athlete to the other athlete, and so on. The more teams can have, the more there can be these warm, safe relationships, the more people are going to feel comfortable showing who they are on the inside and what they're going through, and the less they're going to have significant mental health challenges. Around mindfulness, more specifically, I think it has to do with not the part that I really would want to focus on is not judging. when people have these negative feelings or when they have mental health concerns. Sometimes people can feel, judged, like that they're bad for having those feelings, or that it's wrong to have those. And that I think that instead a big part of mindfulness is not judging and accepting. And so I think we can all work on that. And in a coach athlete environment, like a high competition environment, sending that message that you're accepted for who you are and not being judged for the mental health that you have is really important.
What about you, Duncan? What's your advice?
I really liked what Jonathan said there. I think that's really important. The one thing that I always come out of any competition or anything with for the parents and myself is focus on the positives that came out. It's easy to look at the negatives if you didn't accomplish something or something went wrong. It's easy to focus on those. But what were some of the positives? Because that's when you highlight the positives and make that a hook to cling on to. I know for my kids, when you talk about the positive, they get a smile. When you talk about the negatives, they get a frown. So let's keep the smiles going. And ultimately, it's the most important aspect of anything that they're doing. Are they having fun? If they're having fun, that's really what it's about. It's not about anything else. If you're not having fun, then why are you doing it? I want them to have fun and enjoy.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving hope for people with Special Olympics. And I hope you got something out of this, like all our listeners got something out of this as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks
Thanks,
very
Vic.
much. Take care, everyone.
Bye. I'm here with Kyle Shewfelt. Kyle, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you very much, Vic, for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I'm Kyle Shewfelt, and I am a proud member of the Champions Network. I sit as the co-chair alongside the wonderful curler, Jennifer Jones, and she and I are huge advocates and allies for the Special Olympics movement here in Canada. And previously, I was a gymnast, so I competed at 3 Olympic Games, 2000, 2004, and 2008. And I think the highlight of my career was in 2004 when I ended up winning Canada's first ever gold medal in the sport of artistic gymnastics. So really, really proud of that accomplishment.
Nothing too big of it, right? Just a gold medal.
Just a gold
medal.
medal.
Yeah.
My daughter, my daughter jokes that if I would have won 3 bronzes, that would have equaled 1 gold. So I was happy I got the gold.
So your daughter humbles you, right? Your
Oh,
daughter humbles you.
yes, she does. You can be an Olympic gold medalist, and your little 8-year-old can still demand things of you and tell you that you didn't cook good enough dinner.
Yeah, yeah. I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So, how do you practice mindfulness when you enter the Olympics?
I love that question. And when I look back on my Olympic experiences, all 3 were very different. So the first one in Sydney, Australia, I was just 18 years old. I was what you would consider very young in the sport to make it to the Olympic Games. And so I was just really wide-eyed and excited, and I was there for the party, man. I was there to have some fun. But at those Olympics, I realized I ended up coming in 12th place. And one of my really close friends, he ended up winning the gold medal on floor exercise. And so for me, that totally opened up my mind to what was possible at the next games if I really applied myself. Heading into the next Olympics in Athens, there was an article in Sports Illustrated that was predicting who would win what events, and my name was predicted to win a gold medal on the floor exercise. And with that came a lot of pressure, and a lot of athletes had tried in gymnastics to make a final to win a medal, but no one had ever done it. So I had that extra pressure of breaking that barrier and being the first. And so I remember feeling a lot of stress, feeling a lot of pressure on my shoulders. And one of the things that my coach really helped me to do during the lead up to those games was to take a step back and to realize that I was in this position of feeling this pressure because I had done the work and I had done really, really well at the competitions leading up. And that was the reason why I was predicted to win, was because I had proven that I could. And so he helped me do a little bit of a flip. And when we talk about mindfulness, I think sometimes we can feel the pressure and we can feel the expectations of everybody else around us. And in those moments, we have to take a second and we have to realize that that pressure has been earned. That expectation has been earned. People are thinking of you to win because you can win. Being mindful like that really helped me to accept the feelings inside, the feeling where your heart beats a lot faster and your mouth gets dry and you start to get really nervous and your hands are shaky. I knew all of those feelings were feelings that were going to make me really good on that day. And then my final Olympic Games in 2008, that was in China, in Beijing. And I had actually broken both of my legs 11 months before those Olympics. And so heading
Did
into,
somebody say break a leg and you
yeah, they did. They were like, hey, break two legs, right?
really? And then
Break
you
a leg.
did.
I
And
know.
then
And
you
then I
did.
did. I don't recommend it. It doesn't feel really good. Like it hurts. I don't wish pain upon anyone. But what
When
that
they say, but when actors say break a leg, they expect you to get in the cast.
to totally nail it. Hey, yeah. And what's interesting heading into that Olympics in 2008 was I was so mindful because I really appreciated the opportunity of being there. And when you're injured, you have to access something different within yourself. You have to really trust yourself. And you also learn to look around and be really appreciative of all the things that are going on. And so I had a very mindful experience at those Olympics, I would say more than any other ones, because I looked around and really realized how much hard work it took me to get there. And I appreciated all of the people around me that helped me to get there as well. So those were my three Olympic experiences and how I use mindfulness.
Do you ever miss going to the Olympics? Do you ever miss competing ever again?
No. I I loved it when I did it, but when I was ready to be done, I was ready to be done. And now I love doing commentary. I love getting to do the analysis for CBC for the Olympics. But I'm actually quite happy that I no longer have to deal with all of that stress because it does take a lot of toll on you. I was very tired for like a few years after I was done competing because of all the focus that I put in. So
Mental fatigue, right? Mental
yeah,
fatigue. I totally
exactly.
get it. I totally get it. Whenever I'm done like a Special Olympics tournament, I felt like, ah, it's over. I'm tired. Let me just eat and let me just pig out. Am
Just
I
pig out.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Have a little relaxation time, right? Balance.
Would you ever like transfer your knowledge to the second generation, or you're just like, I'm done, I'm good, I want to do commentary now? Like, what is your mindset at with like the
Like
whole coaching and like coaching gymnastics thing?
Vic, you're like really digging deep here, man. You're like Oprah, asking me all the hard questions, the powerful questions. I love it. I tried coaching gymnastics when I first finished, at a high level. I tried to coach like higher level boys. And to be completely honest, it wasn't for me. But what I found a passion for in coaching is coaching young athletes who are just getting their start because I like to make it fun and I like to really focus on the foundation. So I actually opened a gymnastics center in Calgary 11 years ago, and I've had some friends from the Special Olympics join me there. We have some athletes who have Down syndrome, and we have some Special Olympics Calgary events that happen there, rhythmic gymnastic events. So I like to share my love of gymnastics through my commentary and through being an owner of a business and coaching young little kids, teaching them the basics of gymnastics. Thanks for asking about that. My coach was such an awesome coach.
Speaking of coaches, what does your support team look like for you and other people, like your nutritionist, your physiotherapist, your doctor? So, what does that look like for you?
So my support system when I was an athlete was, I always called it a trifecta. It was between myself, my coach, and my parents. When I was a little boy growing up in the sport, the three of us made decisions together. And then as I got older, my coach and I really became a partnership. We became a team. But my support system extended beyond that. I had an amazing group of friends and teammates that's I was spending the days with in the gym, going through the hard stuff together. I'm still really close friends with many of them today because of what we had to endure together. I love that sense of struggle with somebody else. And when you get through it, then you become closer. I had a nutritionist that was helping me make healthy food choices, to develop meal plans that were going to help support me. And I think even now in 2024 versus the 2000s, there's even more research and knowledge. So I can just imagine how powerful that can be now for an athlete. I had a strength and conditioning coach. I had a sports psychologist to help me with that mental side of the sport. And I know great athletes like Simone Biles, who's the world's greatest gymnast. She works with a therapist and advocates for that mental health side of the sport. I had a physiotherapist that I saw often, a massage therapist, a chiropractor, and then I had my family and my friends outside of sport that I think, Vic, really helped me stay balanced. Because if you only think about your sport 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you will burn yourself out. So you need to have outlets
Totally.
and things you like to do outside of your sport.
What are some pressures that male athletes face every day?
There's a few different pressures that athletes are facing, but I think the main one that threads throughout every sport, whether it's a Special Olympics athlete, a Paralympic athlete, or an Olympic athlete, is the pressure to perform in a specific moment. That's really daunting, and that can be really hard. But it can also be a challenge that can be embraced, and it can be a challenge that you can get excited about. You can do this. You've got this. You believe in yourself. I'm powerful. I'm strong. I know I can do it. I might be sore today, but I believe in myself.
Were there any doubts that you faced during your Olympic trials that really weighed on your mind every single day, and how did you overcome it?
Every day I had doubts. I had imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. Everybody else is better than me. I haven't worked hard enough. But I use journaling and I use powerful positive self talk to try to overcome those little thoughts. Because those little thoughts of they're fear. They're fear of failure. I don't like failing. No one likes failing. And when you put yourself out there saying, I want to be the best in the world, or the best in the country, or the best in my province, or the best in my city, that's making yourself very vulnerable. And that's scary. And there's a protection mechanism inside of your head that goes, well, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Run away. Run the other way. But champions are built by finding the other voice inside that says, I can do this. I believe in myself. I'm going to go after it. Even if you fail, you're going to be fine. Your family's still going to love you. Your teammates are still going to be there. Your life will still go on. You might be disappointed, but you can live with being disappointed.
You can't let the failures win. You can only learn from your failures. That's why you can never say I lost. It's another lesson to be learned.
You got it, exactly. And it's changing that language. Instead of being afraid of failure, you should be embracing learning. And I always called it in my career a growth opportunity, a chance for me to stretch and a chance for me to grow and expand.
Final question. What are some advice you can give to families, athletes, and coaches?
I think the thing that makes this world special is the opportunity to have an impact on someone else's life in a positive way. And some advice that I would give to athletes, coaches, or family caregivers to help support their own health or the health of a Special Olympics athlete is twofold, okay? The first one is you got to do something for you each day. And that means a physical thing. You got to move your body, or you have to do a meditation or a flexibility training, or have a session with a therapist, go for a walk with a friend, take yourself for a coffee and write in your journal for 30 minutes. Do something good for you. And then the second thing is do something good for somebody else with no intention of getting anything back. If you can do both of those things combined, I'm telling you, this world is going to be an even more magical place.
If only there was more people like you in the world, this world would be better. Those are some big shoes to fill, am I right?
But
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Thank you for being on the pod.
my pleasure. Thank you very much, and congratulations on wonderful hosting, my friend.
I am excited and had the privilege to speak to Matthew Fields, a fellow Special Olympics athlete. Let's start with a quick introduction to kick off the icebreaker. Please introduce yourself and tell us what is your favorite sport?
So I'm Matthew Fields, and my favorite sport is alpine skiing.
What made you choose alpine skiing other than any other sport?
Uh, it started actually when I was about 19 years old, and it was in '09 when I found out there was a team in Collingwood, and so from then on, I've been with that ski team that I'm on at Blue for now 15 years, and it has really opened my eyes about what good competition is and what values of friendships, you name it. It's all about good quality um, coaching and just having a good time.
Were you ever scared the first time you hit the slopes in alpine skiing? And how did you overcome it over time?
It was in the year of, I think, 2010. It was our first regional, and I never knew what gates were. And bit of a bit of a scare for me, but in the end, I then kind of figured out exactly how to go around a gate and not go the opposite direction. And ever since now, I kind of just say to myself, the one thing you need to do is go down straight and not miss any of them.
Speaking of competitions, how do you deal with your mindfulness and mental health? What do you do before you go to a big skiing tournament? What does your mindfulness routine look like?
I do a routine exercise that my personal trainer put together with me, and I do it before I compete, and it really gets me into the zone and getting myself focused during the point where I'm going to be ready to ski.
Do you ever get nervous on big tournaments? And how do you deal with all the butterflies that you have on big tournaments? How do you deal with that?
How do I deal with it? So there are two different ways I can deal with it. Um, I can turn some music on and listen to some music to just calm me down. And the other way is, just being, just being calm. So I sometimes I go for a walk, sometimes I forget what I just did, and I don't think about what I just did because then it distracts me.
Do you ever like get down on yourself from a bad race? How do you overcome the obstacles that get in the back of your mind? Like, I could do better. Like, we all have that inner voice saying, like, we can all do better. How do you like deal with that voice?
Oh, like the little voice that sits in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes I go and I look back at something like a technique that I'm working on, and it doesn't go the way I wanted it to go. I don't, I don't, I never stop, because if you just keep doing the same technique over and over and over, then I'll get better at it every time. And no matter how the outcome is, I still tried my best and I made the effort to create that little video in my mind of what that technique should have been.
From my perspective, I always try not to compare myself to other athletes. Do you compare yourself to anybody, or you just try your best and what happens happens?
So I don't really compare any athlete to myself because I don't worry about them. I worry about myself, and that's the only thing. And I never compare other athletes because they all have the same abilities. Everyone has the same qualities, but I don't think about what they're doing. I think about what I was doing.
How do you handle stress in and out of your sport? Like, how do you handle everyday life, like stress, and how do you handle everyday life in skiing as well?
I handle life pretty well actually when it comes to doing, you know, being in alpine skiing and also being at work, right? There's a lot of things that I have to consider is that I have to find a balance between both sport and work, and it's important for me to plan exactly how that's going to be throughout throughout my daily life, and making sure that I take those days where I have to, train, and days that I need to um, rest.
What healthy habits do you do that helps you in your everyday life?
I exercise uh, 3 times a week with my personal trainer, and I help the family out quite a bit, do some chores here and there, and keep my head away from work as much as I can, and getting away from technology as much as I can, but at the same time, just having a lot of fun, and um not thinking about anything else except just being positive.
Wow, that's really good. And one more thing, what are some advice you could give to athletes about mindfulness and how to calm themselves down?
If I were to give any advice, it would be, you know, if you feel that you're nervous or frustrated or anger or anything like that, what I would do is, step away for 5 to 10 minutes, take a deep breath, listen to some music, um, even exercise helps too, because it really just gets you in a state that you're not alone and you're doing something that is for yourself, and also you're getting yourself in a way that you can productively put yourself in a good mood and also in a positive way.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for doing this podcast with us.
What an honor and what a pleasure it is being. I I'm overjoyed, and it's incredible.
This Special Olympics edition of the podcast has been made possible through the support of Special Olympics Canada and the Australia Adult Neurodevelopmental Center at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, Canada.